Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Bob sent me a note. Steve, check out the story. Doesn't matter which side you're on with respect to the law. The way it was applied appears to have been a problem. So from Newsweek, Shira Lee Bartov wrote this. A woman is jailed for endangering her fetus when she wasn't pregnant. And yes, mistakes were made. The woman was incarcerated for using drugs during her pregnancy while she was not pregnant. Now, of course, you're going to say, Steve, you shouldn't do drugs. Oh, of course, just say no. I understand that. We all understand that. But the point is that this woman who lives in Alabama was being investigated by the County Department of Human Resources for alleged drug use back in January. During that investigation, one of the workers was speaking to one of her daughters, and the daughter said, I think my mom's pregnant. And that's according to the lawsuit the woman has now filed against the county sheriff's office. And that, of course, was filed a couple weeks ago. But the incident happened earlier this year. A caseworker confronted the woman who denied that she was pregnant. And she even said, I'll take a pregnancy test to prove it to you. So they didn't take her up on that offer, but she was arrested. And the charge in Alabama is chemical endangerment of a child, for which she was booked into the county detention center, where they let her sleep on the floor for 36 hours. Not that she was sleeping the entire time, but that was the accommodations. She's on the floor in the jail. Meanwhile, she underwent her menstrual cycle. She asked for pads. They never gave them to her. Now, some people in the audience might be scientists and figure out what that could mean to this story. But we're not all Sherlock Holmes, so maybe that didn't occur to anybody. There's an issue there. But they said that if she posted a bond of $10,000, they would let her out. So her attorney told Newsweek it's just not even thinkable. You could go off somebody's word to make an arrest of somebody being pregnant. You know, you're criminalizing pregnancy, and then you find out they're not even pregnant. And see, that's the weird part. If the woman had said to the worker, hey, I'm pregnant, you go, okay. But when her daughter says it, we don't know how old the daughter is, but when someone else says, hey, she's pregnant, well, you know, that's a little different than the person saying it themselves. So the chemical endangerment of a child charge is based on the principle of fetal personhood, which is a part of the Alabama Constitution. And so since 2010, that one county, has prosecuted more than 150 cases involving pregnant and postpartum women, according to her attorney. And that was 150 chemical endangerment cases. 150 chemical endangerment cases have been brought. Each of the women was held on a $10,000 cash bond and could not leave until they entered a drug rehabilitation program. And those bail conditions are questionable. Her attorney says they're unconstitutional. And the courts have gone back and forth about all kinds of, what can you require somebody who has posted bond and if they're out. And so, for instance, you can make them report and say, I'm still here. I haven't run away yet. But can you make them enter a drug rehab program? Over the last 23 years, prosecutors in Alabama have embraced some form of fetal personhood to bring criminal charges over a miscarriage or a stillbirth in at least 20 cases, which were brought as felonies, according to an analysis of court records and medical examiner data by the Marshall Project. Many of the prosecutions end in lengthy prison sentences for women who were mostly poor and sometimes struggling with addiction. The woman here was finally given a pregnancy test in her jail cell, which determined that she was not pregnant. Now, again, I mentioned there might be some scientists in the audience, but I know there's a lot of people in the audience who like to say, hey, I wonder what it'd be like to be an attorney. If I was an attorney, studying the law, what would that be like? And you ask yourself, if you want to go down that mental exercise path, is that if you had somebody in your custody and somebody says, how do we figure out if they're pregnant? Is there some way we can figure that out? And should we check that earlier or later in the process? In other words, We book her, throw her in the room, make her sleep on the floor for 36 hours, and then we give her the pregnancy test down the road? And it's joking here. Because keep in mind that if they think you're drunk, they will rush to give you a breathalyzer, right? Or equivalent. They will do those alcohol tests pronto. Now, they're doing that because, of course, the amount of alcohol in your system could dissipate over time, and so it is time sensitive. But if they can rush to give you a test to the point where they can get a court order to do it within like half an hour, it shouldn't be that hard to administer a pregnancy test. Oh, I don't know, within the first 36 hours of the incarceration. And so keep in mind, and getting back to if you want to think like an attorney and try to figure this stuff out, keep in mind there are attorneys on both sides of this, okay? The jails, the police, they have attorneys who work with them on cases. And so when they let someone know, hey, we've got a woman here who we think is abusing, and she's pregnant, and so we're going to hold her on a $10,000 cash bond, and then we're going to force her into drug rehab because she's pregnant. And after you hear that she's pregnant about 10 times, the attorney would ask, how do you know? Is she like out to hear an obvious or what? Oh, her daughter told us. Oh, what does she say? Oh, she says she's not pregnant. Oh, okay, wait a few days and give her a test. So she was given the test, and it determined that she was not pregnant. She was then questioned by a sheriff investigator for 20 minutes, and then they let her leave. They let her leave after giving her the lecture for 20 minutes. And the lawsuit says that she was not allowed to leave until after the investigator threatened, warned, and admonished her that she would be charged if they discovered she was pregnant in the next few months, according to the lawsuit. So if we find out that you're pregnant, you're in trouble. So the attorney says that the woman has struggled with humiliation in her small, close-knit community since she was released. And it is kind of hard to keep it quiet that you've been arrested, especially if you're gone for a few days. Word gets out. People may have seen you being hauled off in handcuffs. So the attorney says it's traumatizing. It's not something that somebody ever gets over. It's not a good thing for people to think you're on drugs and pregnant. She would not do that. That's her position. That I would not put somebody that I'm carrying to life in that position. So the Newsweek did reach out to the county sheriff's office for comment, and that's the last sentence of the story, which I assume means that they got no response back in time to put this to press. So it is a crazy story, and it basically is boiled down to that headline, woman jailed for endangering her fetus when she wasn't pregnant. And it's just crazy. And you hear about people in the bureaucracy making mistakes that are just so stupid. And once in a while, you hear about a mistake where something fell through the cracks. Oh, I thought they were going to do it. Oh, I thought they were going to do it. But if a woman got arrested for using while pregnant, okay, there are two important facts in that concept. Using while pregnant. That's it. So how do you prove the first one? Well, presumably through some kind of blood test to see if she's got drugs in her system. So you're going to have to run some tests. And by the way, when they've arrested her for this and they supposedly have probable cause and all that, they can probably get the blood test run to see if she's got drugs in her system. So you would do that. Without that, you kind of don't have a case. But the second element is using while pregnant. So while pregnant. And I'm pointing out here the idiocy, the ludicrousness of the fact that you arrest somebody and are holding them on $10,000 bond, $10,000 cash to get out. And you should test them for pregnancy, you should test them for drugs. Apparently did neither for quite some time. And so some people, and I don't think it's much of a stretch to go there either, by the way, but some people are going to point out and say, Steve, I don't think this is actually about just whether or not she was pregnant and using while she's pregnant. I think that they're probably trying to make a statement here because they think to themselves, okay, we got another one who's doing this. And so guess what? We'll run her through the system and who knows, maybe that'll help. I don't know. And it's misguided if that's what they're trying to do, trying to punish people before they've been convicted for what they've done. And that's one of the things that the attorney is talking about, and he hints at it, and other places says it a little bit more directly, is that when you're arrested, you've been accused of a crime. And we've said this before in America, you are innocent unless and until proven guilty, which would happen at a trial somewhere down the road. And guess what? You can't get a conviction on using while pregnant if you ain't pregnant. So, like I jokingly said at the top, mistakes were made. These are big mistakes, and several of them. Because the first mistake being made here, and again, we don't know the age of the daughter. We don't know the age. The daughter may have been 25. I don't know. But doesn't matter. It's hearsay. I mean, somebody says, oh, I think she's pregnant. Oh, okay, go ask her. Are you pregnant? No, I'm not. Okay, now it's he said, she said. In this case, it's she said, she said. The only way you resolve that would be to get the bottom of it. And she even said, I will take the pregnancy test. They said, okay, and they didn't offer her one. Which makes you wonder what they knew or cared about. So again, and Bob said this in his email to me. He said, Steve, I don't even care whether you think this is a good law or not. He goes, it doesn't matter. It's being misapplied. It's being misapplied. So, I have to tell you, I'm of the age where I grew up in a society where many, many, many more people smoked than smoke now. You used to go into some places and it was like just a fog inside the building because so many people were smoking, okay? Think about a bar in the 1980s, okay? Just purple haze? No, just a gray haze. And I know people who've told me, Steve, my mom smoked while carrying me. When she was pregnant with me, my mom smoked. I know people, and I've seen the photographs, by the way, of people who said, I saw a photograph of my mom posing for the camera, belly out to here, turned sideways, smiling at the camera with a cigarette in her mouth. Now, we've figured out since then that cigarettes are not exactly good for you. And yet, that was going on back then. So if we were to take these laws and drag them back then, just again, a thought exercise, could we arrest and prosecute the mothers who were smoking during pregnancy? And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Steve, the smoking is not as bad as some of the other drugs. You don't want a baby born who's hooked on heroin the day they're born. Of course not. Of course not. I'm simply pointing this out. And so it does seem odd to me the way this story went down. Because again, if you're going to arrest her and charge her for using while pregnant, you'd have to test for both of those things. And she offered to test for the second one. Keep in mind that it doesn't stick, the charges don't, if either of those are wrong. If she's pregnant but not using, charges don't stick. She's using but not pregnant, charges don't stick. Obviously, she'd get caught for something else if she's actually using but not pregnant. Another story altogether, because that's not what she's charged with. So it's a crazy case. Glad that she's got an attorney who took it up. Bob sent it. Thanks a lot from Newsweek. Shira Lee Bartov wrote that. Woman was jailed for endangering her fetus when she wasn't pregnant. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Adventure is an attitude that we must apply to the day-to-day obstacles of life.